Hello, Americans, humanity, and people of Iran, walls out in the world. Humanity, we have been systems tactical ulterior from the human species body of individual bodies and distinctions by that generated by nature itself. Walls alpha rises slash raises. War. Nature shows us the value of alpha and omega. I didn't read this. Nature shows us the value of English grammar, the history of it, of languages, the names of the people of the sciences as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim from off the locations of the campuses at countries A through Z. More and more, the names of the people of the sciences too. A certain type of victim from off the campuses, hyper additional collusion slash S were forced, where the syntax of the names of the people of the sciences and exceptions, are the same thing used remotely and or sensing for the breaching method. And this breaching method used is difference slash S. This breaching method remembered what nature had shown humanity and understands what nature is showing us now. And it uses it to show names A through Z of the names of people, sciences, and hyper additionally. Because and this is right where no one wants in three ways. For example, nature shows us that there is a trinity per science manifest as three distinct identities of relationship it has to itself. And where and how nature shows us that it is functional, being hyper invisible but still discernible, being how its identity is generating two species, completely different individual species bodies, each one made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies, and all group difference slash S. Come with demonstration slash S of the same, of nature generating this. Why? How? The totally different species bodies have two sexes, two eyes. Two parts of time one way, the past and now, experience and now, active. Another way, to the extent we know the value of the season is not even here, etc. And now connected now two ways, but also three ways. For example, three parts of time are bound as the identity of forever nature that nature is, where and how its identity of relationship to it itself, to the extent we can discern, it is the cause of life, what generated everything, and what is generating more of itself through temporary slash lasting space nature. And people who would pretend others, logic or reason or practical, they're going to need to hide inherent active and progressive ties to that for how the breaching method is set up. People to defend their roles with use slash S of their own difference or of other people's differences. I didn't tell him it, but it's recorded because they brought this up too. The news by faking conversations with me, and the interbranch did too. The Britain Superior Court has victims advocates to have collusion slash S where there is U slash S, where they have overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. CBS, for example, they faked conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack. I was in the court next to the World Trade Center attack the morning of it and was in a hotel next to it the night before. These are also people interstates involved with the name Scalora. People from campuses I went to recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed there are people with the name Scalora involved with the World Trade Center attack with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. And Wethersfield police faked conversations with me as a kid and as an adult. And they did that also as collusions with proven child abusers, leaders of kids. And when I caught them forcing and to hiding it since too, because they have more than and them, including themselves, that attached me to fake conversations with them. And these are multiple people. intercities with multiple police departments and retired Wethersfield police chiefs, plural, at least two of them, with the same house slash S further with extended family members. One they said, I don't know if it's really their cousin, people with the name Scalora, increasingly involved with people named Mendez and Demora. And they brought up the name Larry Martin. And Larry Martin used the difference of, he brought up the difference of Shiite or Sunni to my Saudi friend, who they recorded. Wethersfield police forced them to collusions with people named Demoro and Scalora and Cololo. Phil Cololo was further involved too with O'Neill, with Whiting Forensics. Whiting Forensics increasingly through time has ties to various natures of organized crimes and people involved with proven first force, child abusers, leaders of kids. All kinds of roles with all kinds of drugs and medicines crimes and uses of it were as their roles with all kinds of evidences, racketeering worse than war crimes. Multiple courts, judges, and prosecutors are with their kids, collusion slash S, also with doctors and kids personally and professionally involved with them, foreign and domestic, planting evidences to hide life progressions. I recorded all this, hyper evidentially recorded, but they're also putting fake things to hide what's recorded and hiding their motives as the breaching method knew they would. This breaching method uses difference slash S, right? Tactical terror from nature does. Nature shows us, again, we have black people, so whites and blacks. We have the same color eyes and different color eyes at the same time. But then it also is showing us the other species bodies, and we're supposed to contemplate what this is about. Because it never stops demonstrating it. And we're supposed to realize that that's what English was revealed to teach about how the sciences share an identity, how to use it, how and where they appear not to. It comes with demonstration slash S that they do anyway. At countries A through Z, through world wars, every side had a legitimate hyper excuse that is generating other excuses. Every individual body as the phenomenon of countries. While modern countries were founded, James Madison declassified about things about that. Had declassified things about that. But see, this breaching method used people, it measures and maintains sense and sensibilities that uses and has used the words of the people of the past, pretending that's science, and leaving out what James Madison declassified, leaving out what nature itself does. We have black people's whites of eyes. There were laws against black-white, what people could say about it, where and how they could say about it. If they even were found out speaking about all the crazy laws against the women, against the black people's whites of eyes, against Native, they were sensed and heard through their own. Because even the companies and countries, if they weren't part of that, they were sensed and heard. This breaching method was entrenched since semi-ancient times. It knew that and how. It needed to make a whole bunch of collusions as a collusion slash S, and as a whole bunch of natures of criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments that could be simultaneously demonstrated with itself, because it knew that nature would demonstrate. Nature demonstrates to humanity. One of the things that all those laws multi-front against America's founders, there are still houses, the suburbs are from America to Russia to Ukraine, across the globe. The suburbs are that design that were forced for by a torture, extortion, slavery method. People pretended at campuses A through Z. James Madison had declassified because he knew that would be. Because they didn't have free speech. Even James Madison, the only founder we know the name of, the only reason that appears to be debatable is because the breaching method maintains criminally influenced use slash S of each campus. In other words, so all along Route 3 and Routes 3 and Routes 175, for example, in Connecticut, are people involved with the World Trade Center attack, with the networks too. WTNH has the FBI. I didn't know all their names before the World Trade Center attack. A whole bunch of people tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and his co-defendants, their family members, their lawyer. They're also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with all kinds of organized crimes with people of Wethersfield campuses and intercities campuses through time. And before and after the class of 1993. And people will tell you this, but not if everyone's supposed to force groupthink and repeat fake things. They have me attached, and others people attached to fake conversations, fake ties to each other on campus never were. Faked exceptions. There are female judges involved, self-valued, used remotely, self-valued collusion /S with various natures, abuses of boys and girls at the same time, multi-front, sickly, distinctly. He also used functionally, how sickly, non-distinctly. This preaching method knew that people would speak for the law, and their difference having done that. After they came through campuses, incapable. As style, therefore, nature has been demonstrating. You don't vote on slavery. James Madison detailed why and how. We were forced to do. They weren't to vote on. He bring it up. James Madison made the North and the South have to fight because no one was allowed to speak up about things unless they let's bring slavery as a separate subject. What's witch trials about? Well, it's a subject. There's a witch trials place next to Webb House in Old Wethersfield, Connecticut. Other has been communicated at founding locations A through Z. For what James Madison and our founders, plural, they communicated for us to understand why and how. There were plural founders that did not have the security to let us know their names. There were more than 13 colonies entrenched, even with only permitted slavery collusion, wrote collusions even with slavery. And as syntax nature, entertaining such and building upon it. Otherwise, that body was sensed, and worse happened to them and everyone around them. For a perfected method /S that came from semi-ancient times, since before modern religious messengers were born, had already known that once it got the names of the people, the sciences, it wouldn't know it. To collusion /S, where fact-driven nature is appreciated, right, where nature demonstrates difference, as what is not. It is all volumes, while not, but anyway. And with this, we are showing the rest of its complete nature is inseparable from all parts of itself, individually, grouped, and simultaneously. Everything in demonstration of its hyper-simultaneous nature, conjunctive to this. So, wars could have been prevented, and we could we could prevent them by making an anti-need for weapons module and system. And Pantheism is perfect for this. And with the history of Romulus and Remus having to be retold, because the Republic has to be retold, because you guys have left out why and how. James Madison described, a breaching method was left entrenched. Little kids from suburbs could not fathom how adults can't discern, even in the suburbs. And while they are conscious, they're showing the pictures of cities from abroad, has conjunction to what they naturally long and instinctively know. That's criminally foreign influence by the same breaching method that was forced on our founders, sickly distinctly from the people they forced our founders to be collusions with itself. The breaching method. There was a breaching method entrenched. Had our experts allowed mandated law to be followed, Fox Connecticut News has and has had remote use /S of Judge Napolitano's Sense and Sensibilities distinctly from CBS. CBS faked conversations with me as the interbranch did at the same time, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists at the same time, collusion slash S. Everyone's preventing me a voice. Those same names have been collusion slash S with names next to each campus I went to. Increasingly, people from my grammar school that I went to from first to sixth grade, they make confessions about people in my at a kindergarten I went to. They didn't even go to that kindergarten. Increasingly, the family and their kids of that kindergarten are involved with drugs and medicines, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, planting fake exceptions too at crime scenes, and ones not even realized crime scenes, even preemptively, and with people with the prosecutors, judges, their family members. They have corners of streets and all along roads and routes and conjunctions to it and to that, and use slash S of corners. Tim O'Brien has roles with corners of streets, syntax, with people further involved with John Maiano. I never seen him around John Maiano in my life. John Maiano is one of the ones who sought me out to make confessions and demonstrations, communicating and that he was going to pretend other. But it's recorded too. He has rules with a predicate acts with facts method slash S. I've recorded at my campuses in between them. Also, they shouldn't have hid things from my parents and other parents. I've recorded much worse with the principal upskirt nature than upskirt pictures. And his roles further with digital crimes, with people, and the differences of guilt was used remotely too, because there are foreign bodies involved with the same ones, a whole bunch of different countries. And this is a method recorded at different campuses, abuses of the leaders of the kids, sickly distinctly from abuses of the other kids. Also, because of functions by how sickly non-distinctly is maintained self-value. You guys wouldn't believe how many things you self-value, they don't really self-value. But you're pretending that reason and logic by you or anyone else, in other words, is practical reason. Use James Madison's phrase. Unabridged. Use the Constitution's phrase. James Madison and the plural founders had to force the language of everyone else to be what it was. But it was also forced, limited, abridged, tactically abridged slash hyper abridged. That's why we haven't had it addressed. Little kids know by correlation we have black pupils, whites of eyes. And there are psychopaths. In other words, not our teachers and things like that. We know from off campuses, but they do this trick too, where they have the three branches of government, overt criminal enterprises, private and foreign countries, shown at the same time. And worse, names next to body dumping spots, years apart too. Time use slash S of the names next to the totally different bodies and killing fact. People involved with the corrections offices and judicial branch offices, correction conjunctions to it and to that. Hyper additionally used remotely after they're already having been all sides of criminal and civil cases and crime scenes and interbranch and foreign at the same time already put the same sequence shifts. They are styles of logic, natures of logic generated by nature itself. With and as demonstration slash S of a special difference being forced from Earth through and as our own. Lethe of Hades. That may have killed a lot of fish and beautiful things. All the fresh water gone, and PFAS, forever nature, forever chemicals, and it's disgusting. Meanwhile, the whole ocean, the entire ocean is producing. It's reported that Joe Rogan got arsenic poisoning because he started eating fish, sardines. It's reported that there's mercury in the fish, plastic, God knows what other chemicals, medications. Half the medications, not only are they not needed, they're forcing that to be collusion slash S with organized crimes. using remotely their needs to pretend other, using remotely the needs of the names of the people, the scientists pretend they're quality identities of integrity they are not. Forgiveness is because they were child abused. Forgiveness is because they had other communicated for our founders. And where and how people were going to sense this at each age of fact tribute nature. They are going to sense it, leaving out, collusion / us to an extent, every nature of industry, every nature of, had / has, every nature of integrity. Oh, but these are good people. Good people stay evil. Right where and how they want to estimate, avoid, hide, or enter the conversation about New York City, cities across the world, while not capable of affording honesty relative to the founding location / us. Tactically denatured, tactically a landscape theater constructed by the hyperforeign breaching method that only permitted northern colonies and southern colonies in the foreign countries that were involved entrenched with the torture, extortion, slavery method / us against every single person. So they should fix the fake news. And they should not hide, because this would have prevented wars too. Oh, but they did. In other words, you guys are leaking too. Then you guys want to debate people, and you leak. So CBS has intelligence next to their location and is also involved with victims advocates with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. A Joe DeMoro and a Michael Kerr recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have roles with foreign and domestic military with abuses of boys and girls along Route 3 when I was a kid, and now as the roles with the news too. There were reports, even if they made up they may have parts, things tied, they're making up things tied to real stories. Then they're going to pretend, oh, it's not real. In other words, I'm not saying it's not real about Sandy Hook, but Sandy Hook had / has collusion / us with the intelligence community there, and with the campuses, intercities, and with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices in Wethersfield, Connecticut, as their roles also with their patients and criminals with the prison there before they were caught, and with names next to the body dumping spot of a serial killer who also had / has collusion / us with the people with the extended family members like a Phil Colol, further involved with the principal upskirt nature of the force. And other people with the prison, like with the name Cintron from Puerto Rico. I don't know if he's related to the police chief Cintron, but there's a retired police chief Cintron also involved with the same house / us with sexual and medical offenders of kids, leaders of them first force years apart, and their roles with the falsified police reports, identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, and since I was a kid. They faked conversations with me as a kid and I was an adult. They have people with the Marines, people with the Air Force, people with the Navy, foreign and domestic. They have a Mexican diver involved also with whiting forensics. A bunch of people involved with retired, like a former Mayor Gold, his family members, and conjunctions to them and their neighbors, spots next to their house, involved with them with covering up federal evidence crimes from the past, collusion / us with the FBI, the courts, medical and sexual offender kids, roles with difference, people from other countries. Then they use that to pretend for other motivations. In other words, that's where they start leaking and demonstrating where they're involved with rackets with difference. And they pretend that's only because that's what they're directed to pretend. Because in the background they have a whole bunch of different countries, and they can't go into that because no one learned how to speak about that legitimately. Again, because you guys have been systems tactical ulterior from the one that nature uses with individual species bodies of individuals, and where and how it generates group differences to an extent as their difference / us. That extent comes with the rest of its complete identity of relationship with itself, equally valued, increasingly. And the value of that, 3 ways equally in value. we're going to examine how the hyper-invisible but still discernible exists. There are technological reasons. There are not just the weapon systems, and everyone's measuring who's going to do that. In other words, that's why we have to change the nature of things. We have to enter the nature of industry /S with the nature of debate. You guys are forcing a nature of debate and motivations. Oh, that's why they'll leave out the breaching method, or in other words, it's a clear scientific value, but it's also clearly replaced, and it is also collusion /S that the campuses already had, with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, while used remotely by way worse. So we have to focus on the predicate acts to see through, discern that here, there, and collusion with different /S. Many ways I tell best. Box things. We have our the names of the sciences, the people of the sciences are breached. They are criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought. They have readings of statutes and precedents that give the benefit of the doubt at the last second to people based on their job, their title, their education, etc. They consciously have been reading those, have criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought readings of statutes relative to exceptions and exception nature, and their roles placing it planted fake. So increasingly, too, I don't know who it is. I don't know the whole name of fire departments are also leaking roles with the courts involved with sexual medical offenders of kids, other natures of drugs crimes, untimely death rolls, collusions, the prosecutors and judges with their little kids, collusions with such, other natures of organized crimes. They are shown they can't afford to have anything but by collusion /S with the breaching methods rolls with the stream of people in courts each day. Hear many pray. Everywhere time to be, at all ages of humanity. They sickly distinctly help while hurting each age of humanity, and hurt while helping. And that difference is exploited too. This breaching method is a method that uses different /S and rolls self-value with and as use of it /S through and as systems abridged, tactical ulterior from that generated critical for short words proper, short words with humanity. You have a bunch of talking heads for their own phrase that they plant too, with the people involved from, before I was born and through my lifetime. Between the campuses, they've been planting evidences, also interstates, also internationally, time collusions. It's also manifest next to the campuses, intercities. A bunch of people next in foreign and domestic intelligence next to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. The difference of guilt between the ones at the campus next to it or temporary. That is also used remotely. And their collusion /S with all sides of criminal and civil cases, investigators personally and professionally since they were kids, inter and intra-cities collusions too, with a method /S with the databases. Increasingly, Kevin Harris is one of the ones involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids that his parents are involved with, and with the Lethe family that faced conversations with me. That also has their daughter involved with predicate acts with them, and wire and mail crimes, and fake conversations with me, and on Facebook too, with the principal upskirt nature. They have They have whole generations, men and women of a Lethe family with Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living on the mental health care sides of hospitals. Have roles intercities with how they're training the police forms too. Central Connecticut State University has roles with training different natures of police forms, foreign and domestic military. Increasingly collusion /S against me per others too. They want to put everyone in fake conversations with people that never spoke, because they already were shown they can't afford to have. We have the World Wide Web to force equality of fact, human nature. To permit with that quality of fact, human nature, James Madison told us to describe and to understand how it is prevented by a method /S. In many ways, I tell it best boxings. Don't leave apart these things replaced. Not one has traced. This heals all things. Boxings, you have critically foreign influence readings of all the religions. Right through world wars, they have psychiatry. They force drugs on people. And they even fake that, and then so they can try to pull it off later. And then in other words, sooner or later too, they get the people they have all kinds of drugs crimes against the elderly with prosecutors and judges too. They have probate court judges because they're locking the place together. They're using drugs for solutions. Keep people either calm when they're not supposed to. If they try to, all kinds of behavior racketeering. You guys are preventing calmness, and you guys when you're trying to, you guys all exceptions, exception nature too. You become styles of it that can't afford how nature uses and is exceptions, exception nature too. So we can see people discern. They recorded themselves planting fake exceptions. I never, in other words, I forgot her name, but in other words, I think her name is Erin. I never basically had a conversation with her. She was influenced to be next to me. And people knew that. And her neighbors of where she reportedly lives now have further ties to child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. And Mr. Pruzzi and the DeMorrow family. Had roles. The only time I saw her, she walked by me right when we were supposed to fight in 5th grade. And there, in other words, he has collusions of people that attacked me on my street too. And in other words, they're putting fake things in databases, behavior racketeering, worse than war crimes, right through world wars, interstates. Connecticut had roles of the World Trade Center attack. And this lady, in other words, please get them on paper, Judge Napolitano. I've asked Judge Napolitano. Facebook has roles with his sense and sensibilities before he left Facebook, before he left Fox News, rather. But this is all the rat networks and the differences of guilt there, or the names next to them, and them or the interbranch they've been collusion /S with, and then further with the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices and conjunctions to women to them and to that, like Route 3 in the state judicial branch offices, and like the corrections offices. Had roles where Connecticut's corrections offices had roles with names foreign and domestic with the World Trade Center attack and with the campuses and where and how all our countries are shared. Oh, well, you speak for America. Come on, because we don't know each other. We'll go talk. How long have we heard that? We have black people as whites of eyes. We know each other. We know there was a breaching method entrenched. And who doesn't know it? That's because there's collusion /S too with the people attacking our founders and the people defending them, framing them as other than they described. They described us to understand why not one of our founders had the security to let us know their names. That's why they told us to refer to themselves as James Madison. I don't know who, in other words, thank you. Boxings. It teaches things. But makes no sound but shush. But preferring the shush sound, boxing. While martial arts semi and or sometimes prefers the shush sound. And while wrestling does not. The sciences share the way, the hyper way /hyper way.